I'd like to call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, January 17th. Welcome, everybody. There's no additions to the agenda. There is one disclosure. Does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none here. Madam Mayor is going to be, Kathy Burkhardt-Jessen is going to be joining us a little later tonight. She does have one. I'll read it. It's Kathy Burkhardt-Jessen, 16.1 item on the agenda, accounts paid motion. She has her conflict as the payment process for project that family members, her son is directly working on at Granton Estates. That's her pecuniary interest. So what I'm going to do is jump to 16.1 to pass that now since she's not here so that she doesn't have to, we don't have to jump back and forth when she gets here. So we could go to 16.1. I'll read that motion. That the council of the township of Lucan Biddulph received the attached accounts as paid for information as follows: December 2022, $3,318,418.48. If I get someone to move that and pass that. Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Announcements. I just want to do a shout out, as everybody I'm sure knows, that the under 18 women's winning the gold medals. Special. But even extra special for Lucan Biddulph as we had an alumni, Jocelyn Amos, playing on that team. There's a pretty cool picture of her on the Lucan Minor Hockey website. And it was great to see her play hockey in Lucan and then watch her on TV on the weekend. So that was awesome to see. So no closed sessions. And now we are going to go into council adjourn its regular meeting at 6:02 in order to sit as a committee of an adjustment under the Planning Act. Get someone to move that by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? That's carried. This is for a consent application, Sainsbury Line, the Hall property. If I can pass it over to Dan.
Through the chair. Thanks, everyone. Just for everyone's information, my name is Dan Fitzgerald. I'm a planner with Middlesex County, and I provide professional planning services to Lucan Biddulph here tonight. So the first application is application B12/2022, which is located at 33823 Sainsbury Line. And it is a dwelling surplus to a farm operation as a result of a farm consolidation severance. So the purpose is to provide committee here tonight with a recommendation on the proposed severance, where the applicant is seeking to sever off the existing residence that is attached to the farmland, which would permit the sale of the farmland to continue as an active farming operation. So the request to sever the surplus residence as a result of the consolidation by the applicant does seek to establish a lot with a frontage of approximately 100 meters along Sainsbury Line and an area of 1 hectare in keeping with the surplus residence zone policies that are contained in the zoning bylaw. The remnant farmland would maintain a frontage of approximately 50 meters and an area of 46.8 acres, and it would be maintained for the purpose of crop production. The land is located immediately south of the village of Lucan settlement boundary. It is bounded by residential lands in the format of single detached dwellings to the north, agricultural lands to the east, south, and west. The lands are currently zoned agricultural A1 zone in the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and they are designated agricultural area both in the county official plan as well as the township's official plan. So the county official plan as well as the township official plan establish a number of criteria that must be met in order to evaluate a proposal for a severance of a residence that has been deemed surplus to the consolidation of a farm operation. Those include that the residence exists prior to 1999, the residence being deemed habitable, the services being fully contained on the severed lands, whether it can maintain its access and frontage on a road, the size of the parcel be limited to the residential use as well as the associated services. The lands be rezoned not to permit any new residential development on the remnant farmland, and that the residents be deemed surplus through the consolidation of the farm operation. So in this case, the applicant does meet all the applicable policy requirements. It is required as a condition or recommended condition that the severed lands, being the agricultural lands in this case, be rezoned to an agricultural no residence, which is an A3 zone, thereby prohibiting the establishment of any future residential uses on the lands. And the remnant lands in this particular case, which is the residential property, would be rezoned to a surplus residential zone. The severed lands will also be required to be transferred to a farming corporation as identified by the applicant. So given the above and as included in the planning report, I am recommending approval of the severance application subject to the 13 conditions as outlined. So thank you, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions that council or the public may have.
Yeah, so I was going to go to the public first. We have some people online and then also in the gallery. So first, I'm going to reach out to the gallery if there's any further comments or any questions they'd like to have answered. Okay, seeing none, now I'll go to the public. I'm not sure who's all on. I saw who submitted. If you have anything you'd like to add or comment on, I'll ask, I guess, Elaine and Paul, if you're on, would you care to ask any questions? And then I have Matt Weston.
No, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
No, thank you. No questions.
Okay. Chelsea King. Then Brian Minalto. That's what I said, Brian. Yeah, so that's who I had on there. So, and now I will ask council. Oh, sorry. Does he have his hand up? But are you on mute maybe? Okay, go ahead, Brian. Jennifer. Go ahead and ask your question when you're ready. You can go ahead and speak in the mic if you want to. And would the applicant like to add anything further? Okay, thank you. Now to council. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Through the chair. I just wanted to ask a couple questions with respect to the future agricultural parcel. I wanted to ask about the access to the property and whether an entrance would be required to the highway or how access to the property is handled.
Through the chair to Councillor Hodgins. So in this particular case, the single detached residents will maintain their existing access to Sainsbury line. The agricultural access will be required as a condition to establish their own separate access to the property.
And just one additional question, what's happening with the existing farm buildings on the residential property?
Through the chair again to Councillor Hodgins. So as included, I believe as condition number 12 to the planning report, they are required to be reviewed structurally by an engineer if they're going to be maintained as residential accessory structures, as there are code implications for residential buildings versus agricultural buildings. So subject to that review, one or two may need to be removed from the property. As well, they will have to ensure that they're meeting the zoning and maximum zoning requirements for accessory buildings on agricultural properties, which in this case for residential use would be 5% lot coverage. So they will have to look at that further through the recommended conditions of consent and quantify whether or not those structures can remain on the lands.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just to build on Councillor Hodgins' point, the access to their secondary access to the property will have to be for the people who are farming it. Is there any indication where that's going to be? Or do we need to know that right now? I guess my question is for Dan.
Sorry, through the chair. Counselor, do you mind repeating your question?
I just building on the Councillor Hodgins' question about the fact that there's going to be access to the farmland. Is there any indication where that's going to be? Or do we need to know that yet? Or is that going to cause an issue for down the road? I'm just wondering because I don't see where that would where it would be on the map here. So
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Reagan, while it's not necessarily laid out exactly where that access point will be at right now, it's likely to be immediately adjacent the south property boundary of the severed residential lands, given that there is, quite a number of trees that exist within that property area.
okay, thank you, Chair.
And there was a question typed on the screen. That's what Ron Raymer was going over to Dan to tell him. So Ron, can you ask that
Yeah,
question?
Maybe what I'll do, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is just read out the question. The question is from Brian and Jennifer. He must have an audio issue with his computer there. The question is, will the farmland remain as farmland or can it be developed? And I guess that's a question for our planner.
Yeah, so through the chair to the member of the public, so the farmland in this case is outside of the settlement boundary for the village of Lucan. And essentially what that means is until there was any inclusion within the settlement boundary, which is subject to, a much further review process through a comprehensive review of an official plan, which you recently did previously in 2022. That land is not developable. So at this particular point in time, that land is to remain agricultural and no residential development will be permitted.
Any other questions of council or public? Okay, seeing none, I've got a recommended motion here. I'll read that the application for consent B12 2022 filed by Jack Sosa on behalf of Kirk and Mary Hall to sever a parcel of land for the purposes of disposal of residents surplus to a farm operation having a lot frontage of approximately 100 meters along Sainsbury line in an area approximately 1.0 hectares from a property legally described as part of lot 32, concession 4, north of in the township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex, and known municipally as 33823 Sainsbury line be granted with the following 13 conditions. If I get someone to move that. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to ask that the committee does now rise and move into a public meeting at 6:15 under section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended. And this here is to discuss the Old Clover Village subdivision phase 4B. It's a zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 08-2022. Dan? Sorry. Motion. Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Went too fast there. At least I didn't read the motion.
Through the chair, thanks members of council. So the application, which is ZBA 8-2022, before council for consideration this evening, is with respect to a holding symbol removal within the Old Clover Village subdivision in Lucan. So the purpose of the application is to provide council with a recommendation regarding that holding symbol removal for phase 4B, which represents the last phase of the subdivision. So the draft plan of subdivision as the last phase contains 55 single detached residential lots, along with a potential future access for lands that are located east of this particular parcel. The developer has met all the requirements for removal of the holding symbol, those including that the lands are serviced. They have entered into a subdivision agreement and registered on title. And also they have approved appropriate zoning on the lands, and the final plans have been approved by the county and have been registered with the land registry's office. So given the above, as required through the holding provision, I am recommending removal of the holding symbol, which will allow for the construction of the 55 single detached residential lots as the final phase of the subdivision. So thank you, and available for any questions you may have.
We also have the applicant Jeff Fung on Zoom too, if there is any questions or if he wants to add anything. Jeff, did you want to add anything at this time?
No, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will look to the public. If there's any comment from the public, seeing none. Council, any comments from council? Go ahead, Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. I have two questions. The first one is, how long has Old Clover subdivision been under construction, or how long has this been in the works? And do we have a count of how many homes in total in all 4 phases for this development?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Hodgins, it's a bit predated to me, being here with the municipal or with the township and the county. However, I believe the initial application was made in 2008. And the initial approval for phase 1 was in 2012, was when the original subdivision agreement was signed. Overall, the subdivision has included many different phases and sub phases of that. But altogether, I believe there are 200 single family home dwelling lots that have been established through the Old Clover or Lucan Estate subdivision. As well as one remaining high density block, which is site plan approved for 57 apartment dwelling units. So in total, we have 257 units, residential dwelling units across the entirety of the subdivision.
All right, thanks for that. No, that's helpful just to kind of put it in perspective, how long these large scale subdivision developments can take to build out. So thanks for that.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I have a recommended motion here that the request to remove the holding H symbol by 2647076 Ontario Inc. to allow for the construction of a 55 single detached dwellings be granted, and that the implementing bylaw be passed. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now I'd like to let council adjourn the public meeting at 6:18 and we reconvene its regular meeting. Someone to move and pass that. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? Thank you. We're into the regular meeting. We're on to delegations and we have one tonight. Aqua's here for third quarter operating report. So if you'd like to step up and give your presentation and just make sure your mic's on, please. And welcome. Who all do we have here? Renee, and I guess I should welcome everybody. We have Renee, Dave, and Susan. Susan, right. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for having us here tonight. Members of council, members of municipal staff, again, thank you. My name's Dave Sharp. I'm the Senior Operations Manager for Aqua for the Lucan Biddulph wastewater treatment plants. Here tonight to present the third quarter reports to you. A brief overview of our highlights and challenges throughout the third quarter. We in Granton, there were no non-compliances for the Granton RBC in the third quarter of 2022. The Granton SPS, which is the pumping station, continues to have clogging issues with the pumps due to the cloth type material being flushed down the sewers. Again, an ongoing issue. We've had 10 clogs to the end of the third quarter at that plant. I can tell you at this time, there's 16 total in the whole year. So again, that's an issue that we need to look at. So highlights for the Lucan wastewater treatment plant. The July final effluent and total suspended solids exceeded the maximum concentration for our regulatory limits, and the total ammonia and nitrogen we call TAN exceeded the monthly average concentration as well for the regulatory limits. This is primarily responsible caused by the cleaning of one of the aeration tanks. We had to empty it due to make some repairs, and so the this sewage that was in that tank got dispersed into other tanks and kind of upset the plant a little bit. So, and there was, other work going on subsequently too. So, the total ammonia nitrogen monthly loading average was 4.36. And it was over the limit of 2.3 as well. So we had those 3 non-exceedances in the Lucan plant. The aeration tank, which we took down to clean, was fully back in service by August 22nd and had that back working again properly. The filter panels that we'd been waiting on order since February arrived. These are specialty panels that were actually had to be made in Italy. There was none in North America, so it was quite a period of time to source them and get them shipped over here. We had started installing those in August as well, removing some of the old and worn out ones. We had ordered enough to get us one complete filter change and took some of the panels that were still good and put in the other one. So we have about 10 spare panels. The intention is this year to buy another set of them so that we can change them out and we won't have any ripped panels and we'll have spares. So that's kind of the highlights of the third quarter. So.
Thank you for your report. Council, any questions? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Just further to the clogs that we're seeing in the Granton pumping station, like we've heard about this pretty regularly now, and it's an ongoing problem. And I'm wondering, like, what are Aqua's recommendations or what steps can we take to address that issue? Is there any way we can, I guess, pinpoint the source, or is this just something we have to keep dealing with?
It's a lot of the clogs seem to be from those disposable wipes, which are not flushable, although they may say flushable or plumber approved on them. Renee and I have been to the local school here, and we've done presentations for our One Water, trying to educate the children to take it home to their parents to not flush those items, as well as other stuff, of course. Unfortunately, the Granton pump station doesn't have what we call a bar screen, which separates cloths and rags and large objects from getting into the pumps that most pump stations do. So, and I think that's something that Jeff is looking at in the future to remedy that situation. So you may have more comments.
Oh, that's great to hear. I think, yeah, we've talked about the education, so that's great to hear that we're able to get to the schools and get that information out there. And maybe it's something that we can consider putting through our social media at municipality. I know we have a lot of followers on our Facebook, so maybe something for us to consider as well. Thank you.
I'm gonna just jump to Jeff Little.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick follow-up to Councillor Hodgins, the comment about the clogs. There is going to be some more information come forward through budgeting. I do have a couple of suggestions on some fixes for the clogs. But just so you know that there's more information coming.
Thank you. Councillor Westman.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm the counselor for Ward 3, which includes Granton. This is an ongoing pet peeve for me because we deal with fats, oils, and grease, and that's a big problem. We've had a few sizable issues there, and then we have this ongoing issue too. And I fully agree. I think we should be doing some education. Like I sat on the Upper Thames and the Saddle Bayfield Conservation Authorities for the last term, and we had the Water Festival. They did a lot of public outreach about your toilet is not a garbage can. You know, the only things that go down is paper, pee, and poop, and that's it. Nothing else. Your toilet paper, because it's biodegradable, right? I don't know. I had heard something about a shredder pump. Is this something? What is that? A shredder pump?
To Councillor Westman, through your worship, it's more of a grinder pump that can take materials like that and solids, and it literally grinds them up and then pumps them out. We've looked at that option and that may be something that Jeff is looking at in the future as well. The problem is it's not an easy just swap one for the other. The grinder pumps require more horsepower, different electrical components and such. So it does take a little bit of planning. It's not possible. And then yes, there is dollars involved in it as well. So, but that's an option.
To follow up. So, yeah, and my concern also is if we grind the stuff up, it still goes down line.
Mhm.
Still ends up in our filters. It's still, you know, it still has to be managed and disposed of. So I don't know, I think it'd be great if we had some compliance, you know, people in the public that are getting on board saying, okay, you know, I get it. I'm not gonna put them down the toilet, whatever. But I think it's a bigger problem. I think we're gonna have to do a lot of education. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? The only thing I'm gonna add is I'm on the Blue Water Recycling Board and there's an app on that and we always have issues with people putting stuff in the recycling putting stuff in the recycling that should go in the garbage. And actually maybe we should be, I'm going to talk to them about maybe, you know, it's always about the recycling, you know, but maybe adding about putting wipes in the garbage because obviously we don't want them in the recycling either. Maybe that'll help to push the wastewater treatment plants in the area too. So I'll talk, we got a meeting on Thursday. So I'm going to ask them on that app if they can promote the wipes going in the garbage too. And I think again, the more messages that goes out, the better. So that might help too. So, yeah. Councillor Reagan. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My question, I think, was answered, and I talked to you earlier today or yesterday, I can't remember. And just about the time it takes to get parts in because of supply chain being what's, but I'm glad to see we're being proactive in getting those. I'm just wondering, I guess, thinking about maintenance schedules and thinking about things that do break and we can't predict 100%, but is there a way of stockpiling things that we may need in case that system goes down and we don't have to wait 6 or 8 months? I don't know if that's practical or something that we can look at, but it looks like we've started to do that, I'm glad to see that. So thank you. I don't know if there was a question in there or just a comment, but
Sound like there's just hope.
we did. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
And anything else? Well, thank you for your report. Thank you for being here, Renee, Dave, and Susan in the background. All right, take care. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
We've got an exciting meeting ahead if you'd like to stay. Except for it's not open to the public, so. Moving on. I'm going to recommend a motion that council receives the third quarter operational reports from Aqua for information. Moved by Councillor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Reagan. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All righty, adoption of minutes. That the regular council meeting minutes of January 3rd, 2023 be approved as circulated and amended. Moved by Councillor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Reagan. Any further comment? All in favor? Yep, passed. Right, and then business. So for core business arising from the minutes, was there anything? Councillor Hodgins?
So I just had one comment. Last meeting, we discussed we had a presentation about the urban design guidelines. And just wondering, I guess, where we left that one, if we add that to our business arising and how that comes back to council. I know we just kind of took it in as information at that time, but I guess what are the next steps or when do we discuss this further?
Ron, would you like to comment on that? For Jeff, what are your thoughts on that then to just have it there as a reminder? So
Yeah, I think, and again, we have some pretty important meetings coming up with our budget. And I think that part of the design standards and the construction, the design guidelines and the construction standards will come up in budget discussion. And certainly we'll get council's view how to continue forward those two processes as we talk about during the budget process.
So, you know, so I guess it doesn't hurt to put it on business arising and then through the budget process, and maybe that'll be in 2 or 3 months and there'll be a satisfactory, we'll be satisfactory with where we're at it. And then we could maybe pull it from there, but maybe putting it on is not a bad idea through the process. that's what you'd like. It's what you're requesting. Okay, yep, thank you.
I'm good with that.
All right, Ron will add that. Okay, correspondence. I'm going to speak to 10.1 was the only one pulled by staff. At 2023 request for letter of private applications for mosquito larviciding permits. And then the recommended motion for this is that council of the township of Lucan Biddulph supports local action by Middlesex London Health Unit to reduce the risk of West Nile virus, including larviciding catch basins and other surfaces, water locations within our jurisdiction, and further direct staff to send a letter of support to the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change indicating the same. Can I get a second? Mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. Any further questions on that? All in favor? Carried. And did anybody want to pull any of the further correspondence to discuss? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you. So I wanted to pull items 4 and 5 on the balance of correspondence, and these are Sauble Bayfield Conservation Authority's Conservationist of the Year for 2023. So the ABCA is taking nominations for the award of Conservationist of the Year, and this award goes to an outstanding community steward taking positive actions in environmentalism and conservation principles. So it's a great honor for me to announce that I'll be submitting a nomination for our friend and colleague, Councillor Alex Westman, for the ABCA Conservationist of the Year. Alex has sat as a member on the ABCA board director for the last term, 4 years, and he's consistently been a strong advocate for conservation in our community and beyond. And I personally always look forward to Alex's information updates from the ABCA board section of our council meetings. And through those updates, his passion for the environment and nature is evident. So Alex, thank you for all your past efforts with the ABCA and for promoting environmental conservation within our community. And I do believe that you're a great candidate for ABCA's Conservationist of the Year.
Thank you very much. That's awesome. Do you have one more thing?
Yeah,
Thank
one
you.
other item I wanted to pull. It was just noted on the AMO watch file. The January 12th watch file, there was just an item there identified for senior community grants. And just wanted to ask staff whether this is something we can look at exploring a little further. Whether we have some community groups that support seniors in our community, and we can encourage them to apply for this grant funding or maybe support them with that. And I know we also have some senior fitness programming that we support through our municipality. So just looking for opportunities to leverage that grant funding.
So to Councillor Hodgins through the chair. Yes, we will look at that. I believe our Parks and Rec manager has already been looking at that, but I will bring that up to him and he can bring something forward to the next meeting.
Anything for follow up on that or anything further? No. Anyone else? Anything further? Okay, I got to recommend a motion here that items 10.1 through 10.2 correspondence be received for information purposes. Going to move her in a seconder. Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Reagan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Committee reports, Blue Water Recycling. I meet on Thursday night. CDC.
We have a meeting scheduled for the 25th.
Okay, thank you. Luke, can hear enough fire boards? Anything? Nothing. ACBA, nothing. Upper Thames, Parks and Rec, nothing. On to staff reports. I don't believe there's anything. Ron's, I've got a verbal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick verbal announcements. I've been invited to meet with the Minister of Finance tomorrow morning in St. Thomas, part of their pre-budget discussions. So it's kind of interesting. I've never been invited to this before, so it's a new opportunity for me. It's going to be interesting. I'm hoping to bring up things like infrastructure funding, which we are constantly asking for. I want to bring up the issue of our insurance rates that they keep increasing to the point where we're not going to be able to afford insurance very soon. And then also I want to confirm, or would like them to confirm the ongoing stability and the amounts for things like the Ontario Municipal Partnership, our OMPF money, our OCIF money, and as well as the gas tax. So we're going to try and see if we can't urge them to continue. We like stability. We want to know where we're going. It's easier for us to plan for these types of things. And as much as they may not like it, I think it's gonna evolve into a discussion about the impacts of Bill 23. I don't think we can have a discussion with any ministry without that coming up at this stage of the game. So it will be interesting. So again, that's tomorrow morning. And then next Monday, the mayor and I will be meeting at Roma with I think it's the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Infrastructure. And again, we will be hammering that we need infrastructure money to be able to do projects like the expansion to the sanitary sewer treatment plant for Lucan. We require that. It's almost a carbon copy of the presentation that was made to the same ministry last August during the AMO conference. It's just updated because we were in the hole before in 2022 when we went to ask them for money. We're in a worse position now as a result of Bill 23. So I think we modify our presentation a little bit, and we just have to keep hitting them that this is the impact to Lucan Biddulph. And what I think we want to try and say is that, look, we're a fast growing community. We were doing a good job. Council has done a good job. I'm sure I'm repeating myself to all the members of council, but we were lucky enough to get one of the last capital grants for that plant when it was built in 91. Council has been very good about squeezing every last ounce of efficiency and capacity out of that plant. But we are at the end of its lifespan. We now have to go forward with an expansion. We're going to expand it. We're hoping to expand it by 50%. That's going to be, I think the latest estimate we had was 16.7 million. With no grants available right now. So that's going to have a major impact on our development charges. We expect our development charges will increase to a conservative number would be 25,000 for a single family dwelling. Of course, right now, the single family dwelling development charge is 6,000, just a little under $7,000. So that's a major increase. However, it still doesn't hold a candle to places like Toronto and things like that. And the largest, I want to make sure that everybody understands, the largest portion of that is because of the sanitary sewer treatment plant expansion. And that Bill 23 adversely impacted our development charges, what we can charge, when we can charge it, and what we can collect for under Bill 23. So that has on estimated numbers as far as growth goes over the next 4 years. At our last meeting, Lisa Courtney from BM Ross, she had some assumptions, and those assumptions were based on the numbers from our chief building official's last report. Well, those numbers had some, they were skewed a little bit towards the apartment units, which are not a regular thing for us. We might get an apartment building on a go forward basis once every 3-4 years, maybe. But so I crunched the numbers using more reasonable numbers as far as the split between single family homes, semis, townhouses, and apartment units. And the number actually got a whole lot worse, almost double. We're adversely affected based on those estimated numbers to the tune of about $1.18 million over the next 4 years. That's a lot of money, which obviously has to be recovered from somewhere. Somebody has to pay for this. So the biggest point we're trying to make is sanitary sewer can't be collected. Sanitary sewer charges can't be collected from the general taxpayer. It can only come from the people who are serviced with sanitary sewer. So that's a lot of money. When you look at $50,000 represents 1% property tax increase, and that's across everybody. When you narrow that down to just the people on sanitary sewers, which is a little over half our population, those are big numbers, and those are scary numbers. So, my point to the ministry, both ministries, is that this Bill 23 could have the opposite effect for Lucan Biddulph. We were doing fine. Please, leave us alone. However, we're caught up with the rule that applies to everybody across the province. And in our case, it could adversely impact what we do on a go forward basis. The 5 members of council could decide that, we can't saddle our existing users with those costs. So where does that leave us? That doesn't that doesn't, that's not going to help build that 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years that the province is hoping to do. So, there seems to be conflicting evidence or conflicting messages from the Premier and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, because one day the Minister of Municipal Affairs said, as a result of Bill 23, no municipality will suffer financially. We'll make you whole, I think was the quote. The very next day, the Premier was at a news conference, and he said, well, he doesn't think municipalities will be adversely affected. So we're getting two different messages. We're trying to figure out, okay, well, which one, I know which one we like, but which one is gonna be the actual fact. So there's a lot of moving parts to all of this, but we hope to make our point, and I think we just have to keep pecking away and getting people's attention. So
It's tomorrow, you said, right? Or-
the Minister of
yeah.
Finance is tomorrow, and the Infrastructure Ministry meeting is on Monday.
Okay, good luck. Thank you. Okay, building and bylaw, nothing, finance, nothing, planning, nothing. Or planning is about to happen. Sorry, financing, yes.
Correct.
Yes, correction. 14.a, I'll bring you to on the agenda. And that is a consent application number B-9 2022 and a zoning bylaw, also amendment application number ZBA-6 2022. And I'll pass that, and that's on the Kent Street, Pembroke Kent Street Land Corp. Dan, go ahead.
Through the chair, thanks, council, for hearing this tonight. So, as stated there, this application is with respect to 122 Kent Street, and that being consent file B-9 2022, as well as concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-6/2022. And as council may recall, this application came before you for a public meeting on October 12th, 2022. The application does consist of a consent for severance to establish a new residential lot along Kent Ave with a revised frontage of approximately 19.8 meters and an area of 690 square meters. While the remnant lands in this case would have a revised frontage of 13.4 meters on Kent Ave in an area of approximately 2.65 acres. The revision to the proposal on the frontage was based on comments that were received by the public as well as council to look at increasing interior side yard setbacks of the future private driveway as proposed by the applicant to adjacent property owners. The second application is with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and the purpose of which is to rezone the severed lot from a future residential exception 3 zone to a residential first density zone, or R1. The remnant zone is requested to be a residential third density exception zone, which would permit the future development of a townhouse / semi-detached dwelling development. Through the site-specific zone, the applicant has requested the following exceptions, which include the addition of the semi-detached use to the list of permitted uses, a reduction in the minimum frontage requirement from 30 meters to 12 meters, a reduction in the minimum rear yard setback to 6 meters, whereas the bylaw requires 10 meters. Clarification on the minimum exterior side yard or reduction to 3 meters, whereas the bylaw currently requires 8 meters on one side and 3 meters on the other side, as well as a reduction to the minimum interior side yard setback of 1.5 meters abutting 124 Kent Ave, whereas the bylaw currently requires 3 meters. I will add that subsequent to drafting of the report, I've had further discussions with the applicant, and they've also indicated that they would like to introduce a provision to cap the maximum height for development in the R3 lands to 7.5 meters, whereas 10 meters is currently permitted. And that's essentially to limit the potential development to 1-story townhomes. So the lands are located on the north side of Kent Ave, west of the intersection at County Road 47, being Saintsbury Line, and Kent Ave. And as identified in the planning report, I have reviewed the application against the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, as well as the township official plan. All three documents prioritize residential development through infill and intensification of existing sites where existing service capacities do exist to service the development. I am generally of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with all three documents and would represent sound land use planning. I would further note that although, oh, sorry, I already covered that. A number of the comments were raised at the public meeting, and they have been included in the planning report. Of note, staff worked with the applicant to modify aspects of the proposal to better align with the comments that were raised at the public meeting. Those include moving the drive aisle access further away from the interior side yard and the corner of the rear yard of the abutting lands, introducing a 1.5 meter barrier free sidewalk along the east interior access, or at least space for one. Which acts to further basically buffer the development from the existing lands. Also confirming with the Conservation Authority that fencing would be permitted along interior and rear yards. Further providing separation from the existing residents as mentioned, an introduction to the maximum height limit to ensure one-story townhomes or semi-detached dwellings are constructed, which would lessen the impact of development within the existing community. Staff also spoke with neighboring landowners regarding comprehensive development strategies for this particular area. At this time, I would say there is no plan for that. However, we will still continue to encourage the dialogue between the different parties that are involved moving forward. And by no means does approving the application zoning tonight preclude that further dialogue could happen between the parties to involve a more comprehensive development of two sites together. So given the above, I am recommending approval of consent file B9 2022, subject to the conditions that have been outlined in the planning report. And further, I am recommending approval in principle of the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 6 2022, providing direction that a bylaw be brought forward for consideration once a deposited reference plan has been received by the township for the consent file. So thank you, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. So you have that in front of you, council. I'll let council know that the applicant Colin is here for if there's any questions to him. He won't be commenting, but if anyone has a question to him, he is here. And Dan obviously will answer any of your questions. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you. I got a couple comments and then I have a question at the end for Dan. I think generally I'm pretty happy and satisfied, I think, with how this process has gone. And I think there has been a meaningful consultation process with the public, with council. There was that opportunity to review this, and comments and concerns were considered, and there were changes made to reflect those comments. So I think this has been a really good process, and how this has been how we've got to where we are. And it's always difficult integrating a sort of infill development like this, and just how it fits in with rear yards. But I was really glad to see the sidewalk connections added, just for accessibility of the site and pedestrian safety. So that's great. I guess my question for Dan, we're seeing a lot of changes to the Planning Act coming with things like Bill 23. And there's likely going to be a lot less opportunity for this type of public meetings and engagement and consultation. I think one of the changes with Bill 23 is plans of subdivision. No longer there be public meetings. So we may not be having as much opportunity for this process, which I think is a very valuable process. So I'm just wondering, Dan, if you can sort of comment on that. If in the future with changes that are being made from the provincial government, is there going to be less opportunity for these sort of consultations with the public and the opportunities to make changes based on those comments?
Through the chair, I need to be careful what I say. So what I would note is this, so technically the legislation never really required public consultation for draft plans of subdivision. So the conveyance of land didn't necessarily require public engagement. However, it left it up to the municipality to determine whether or not they wanted to proceed with one. And that was certainly the perspective of Middlesex County to engage the public more so at that draft plan stage to ensure that, you know, future developability of the land at the municipal side of the equation is done so in an appropriate manner. So while the draft legislation does state that we're not required to consult with the public for draft plan approvals, it doesn't say that we can't. So whether or not we continue forward with consultation in the public, certainly I think, well, certainly in the case that a draft plan is brought forward with a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment, 100% the zoning bylaw amendment will still require that public consultation component. So that will inherently force us down the path of doing it. I always err on the side of caution. I always like to say, let's talk to the public and see what the public wants or would support and what their opinions are and getting their feedback. I know not everyone's going to be happy. Not everyone likes the idea of, especially in infill and intensification, of having these types of developments being built around them. But at least it gives them the opportunity to work with staff, to work with the developer, to maybe make some changes to the plans that are positive at the end of the day and impact them lesser than it could have if it didn't go through that process. So I'm not exactly sure where we're going to land at as in terms of consultation for the future. I know certainly Middlesex County, me personally, planning staff with Middlesex County would still push for those consultation requirements, especially in situations where you have concurrent zoning that are applied, which is typical. But to that end, we're also an arm's length of the province, so we have to do what the province wants.
Any further up, Councillor Hodgins, or
No
any
further. Thank you, Dan.
anything else? Councillor Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. There was two concerns that were raised. One was, and I can't remember specifically, it was about the servicing and whether it was, and I don't know if it was sewer or if it was water, and I can't remember, if maybe you do. But the other one was, there was a concern too about drainage in the property, right in the, and I don't know if that was ever addressed or not. And I don't remember if that was ever, it was a sort of the northwest corner of that property. The yellow line there was a drainage issue or something, and I don't know if that was ever addressed properly. I don't remember, so there was the servicing issue, and I don't know if Jeff can speak to that, but there was a servicing issue that I thought came up. And I was just trying to find it, so I apologize. And there was an issue about ponding at the back there.
Well, maybe I'll have, comment on why there won't be that type of issue.
Okay.
Because you, obviously there won't be, but
Okay.
yeah, you can comment on how that's gonna,
Okay.
why that is.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, so through the chair, to Councillor Reagan and to all of council. So general principle for development is, and certainly applicable in the township, as well as all our local municipalities in Middlesex County, is that pre-development storm flow has to match post-development storm flow. And that just basically means that you have to control water on site so that you're not impacting properties more so after it's developed than it would have been before it was developed. So what we typically ask through the more detailed design side, so in this case, it's not a subdivision application, it's not a condominium application. It's likely going to be subject to site plan control. Through that process, we'd be looking at what is the design grades around the perimeter of the site. existing, and then making sure that there's no additional impact to those surrounding adjacent properties within the existing subdivision. In most cases, we're actually seeking to improve drainage in those infill type situations. Certainly in this case, if you look at the proposed, conceptual plan, they're adding a fairly substantial sized stormwater control pond. And that is going to directly outlet into the municipal drain that's there. So it controls that runoff rate on site and then slowly releases into the municipal drain based on their runoff coefficients. So in theory, there should be no impact to stormwater controls. And in most cases, we would actually be seeing a potential improvement to stormwater controls after the final plan and final construction is completed.
Thank you. Anything further? No, thank you. Any other questions? Other questions? Oh, and I just not going to repeat what Councillor Hodgins said at the start on the applicant working together with their staff, working together with the comments of the public, and appreciate you being here. For if we had any questions of you, so appreciate you being here and do appreciate you working with our staff to come to this conclusion. Thank you. All right, I've got the consent application of the zoning bylaw. I'll be reading the recommended motion. That application for consent B9/2022 filed by Colin McClure on behalf of Carmen Elaine Jones and Dave Wilmer Jones to sever a parcel of land from 122 Kent Ave to create a new residential lot having a frontage of approximately 19.8 meters in an area of approximately 690 square meters and the remnant frontage of approximately 13.4 meters in an area of approximately 2.65 acres for a property legally described as part lots 3 and 4, plan 2020 or 220, part 6 on reference plan 33R 18537 in the township of Lucan Biddulph, county of Middlesex, and municipally known as 122 Kent Ave be granted, subject to the following conditions, and there is 10 of them. If I could get a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Reagan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now we'll go on to the zoning. Going to motion that the zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 6/2022 to rezone the subject properties from the site specific future residential exception FR-3 zone to residential first density R1 zone and a site specific residential third density exception R3H holding zone for the property legally described as part of park lots 3 and 4, plan 2020, part 6 on reference plan 33R 18537 in the township of Lucan Biddulph, county of Middlesex, and a portion of the property legally described as part of park lot 4, plan 2020, parts 4 to 7 on reference plan 33R 20879 in the township of Lucan Biddulph, county of Middlesex, be approved in principle, and that the zoning bylaw be brought forward for consideration once deposit reference plan has been received by the township. Get a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Regan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we are now at 12.4B, and we are going to now move to Timber Ridge subdivision. For draft plan of subdivision file number 39T-LB 202002, and I'll pass it on to Dan. Thank you. And I also note that the applicants are here for if council has any questions too of them, and appreciate them being here. Thank you.
Through the chair to members of council. So the purpose of this application before council tonight is to provide a recommendation respecting a request for draft plan approval of subdivision, that being application 39T-LB 2002, and requested zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 12/2020 for the lands that are identified and referred to as Timber Ridge subdivision. The application has come before council on 2 previous occasions for public meetings. One being December 15th, 2020, and the second being July 12th, 2022. At those meetings, planning staff heard many comments from the public as well as council. Those comments have been absorbed with the applicant, and the proposed draft plan has been modified accordingly. The proposal for draft plan includes 61 lots for single detached dwellings, 1 block for medium density development, 3 blocks for future single detached / semi-detached dwelling units, 3 blocks for proposed linear park, 7 blocks for 0.3 reserves, future municipal road allowances, as well as 3 blocks for road winding to County Road 47. So as proposed, the development would occur in phases with 61 units for single detached dwellings, as well as the multi-unit block, and 1 park block being included in phase 1 of the development. And the second 2 remaining park blocks, as well as the 3 future residential blocks being included as part of a phase 2. The developer is also proposing the inclusion of a multi-purpose trail within County Road 47 being Saintsbury line. Right of way to encourage active outdoor transportation options for the community. The location of the pathway is adjacent to the park spaces and could act as a regional park asset for the entire community, offering alternative options not currently available to the public. Along with the draft plan, the applicant is proposing a zoning bylaw amendment for the lands. They are currently zoned future residential and future residential exception 4. The applicant is proposing to rezone the lands to a site-specific residential first density exception holding zone for the 61 single detached residential lots included in phase 1, a residential first density exception holding zone for the remaining residential blocks in phase 2, which is requested to also permit the construction of semi-detached dwellings, an open space zone for the parklands, and a site-specific general agricultural exception zone for the remnant farmlands, which are located outside the settlement area in order to recognize their reduced frontage as well as size. Would also note that they are proposing a residential third density exception holding zone for the multifamily block that is included in phase 1 of the development. So based on review of the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, as well as the township's official plan, as indicated in the planning report, I am satisfied that the proposal does meet the intent of all the policy documents, as the lands are located within an existing settlement area. They provide a variety of density options for current and future residents. The scale of development is appropriate given the characteristics of the existing community within the vicinity, and the development would be subject to the requirements of being fully municipally serviced. While it is acknowledged that full build out of the subdivision would require an expansion of the sanitary capacity, appropriate conditions have been added to the preliminary draft plan of subdivision conditions that identifies no liability is placed on the township to provide said services, and that any development will be subject to servicing availability. So given the above, I am recommending that the draft plan be approved and that the application be forwarded to the County of Middlesex for consideration as the approval authority. Further, I am recommending that the zoning bylaw amendment application be approved and that the zoning bylaw be brought forward for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Council, any questions of the applicants or of Dan? A couple minutes. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Exciting development, exciting proposal, especially seeing the overall concept plan and everything sort of beyond just the limits of this area. It's exciting to see, and I like the detail and the level of detail that's presented in those conceptual drawings. I recall this previously being presented to council and there being some concern about lack of park space. So I think the proposed linear parks proposed along Saintsbury look fantastic, and it's great to see, and especially how those are tied into that multi-use trail along Saintsbury. Yeah, I see lots of great things here, and And yeah, I guess I applaud the applicant and their engineer for this great looking plan. I guess one question I may ask, we're early in the stage here. I guess what are the timelines like for this development? Like how long is it going to be before we start to see like things happening on site? Is there a lot of design that has to happen?
When does the first family move in, guys? That's the question.
Sure.
So who wants to answer that? That is the question, so. And if it's not the question, it's my question.
Well, we have steps to get to the construction stage. So, but as quick as we could do it. It won't be any hesitation. The plans all drafted and completed, getting this up, the agreement done. Access to the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I made a very bad mistake. I need you to start over and I need you to come to the mic. I'm sorry. My apologies. No one can hear the comment, and yeah, sorry about that.
I just want to say that we want to do it as quickly as possible. You know, we got a number of steps to go through, final plans to be developed, and a subdivision agreement signed by us, and we need access to the pond. So those are the next steps once this project's approved.
No, thank you. No. Follow up with Dan or anybody?
Yeah, Dan, I guess,
Thank you.
can we get, I guess, your perspective on that and maybe a bit more detail about the process, the planning process moving forward? Yeah. Would you be able to elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, through the chair, of course, for all of council's benefit, and the public's as well. So when it comes to draft plan approvals, they are technically county, Middlesex County approval files. They do come to the local level for basically local approval of said plan, and then they are forwarded on to the county of Middlesex for review of the application, circulation, and approval. So the draft plan of application that you see before council tonight for vote, if approved, will be forwarded then on to the county for review. And those draft plan conditions will obviously be reviewed with county council, with the developer to ensure that we're able to actually implement. And then from there, we would be looking at, so once it's physically approved, or if it's approved tonight and gets approved by county council, we would then be getting into the detailed engineering design of the overall subdivision, as well as the development agreement. And you know, as the landowner has indicated, there are certain easement requirements that will have to be established through the subdivision, and detailed design on the stormwater controls, stormwater ponds, access to it, review by the Asaba Bayfield Conservation Authorities and the watersheds. So there is still a much larger process that's involved with it. But once, you know, we get through that detailed engineering design, once the subdivision agreement is completed, that kind of gives the green light to then go in and start installing those services within the subdivision. So once that occurs, then we'd be looking at final plan approval. So municipal first, what they would refer to as first certificate of assumption, first certificate of completion, which would basically be a review of the initial engineering services that are installed on the site. Once that happens, then we kind of go towards the final plan approval stage. And then once that has been signed off by the county, that's when you'd see the first homes being built. So it is a process. It does take time. This is obviously the first step in the process. So when that actually occurs is very hard to know, just because there are still outlying factors that have to be considered more on the detailed engineering design of the overall subdivision. But I know they have yourselves, you have done a lot of that detailed design up front. So it may not be as long, but we'll see.
Follow up, Councillor Hodgins?
Yes, please. I guess the medium density blocks, I guess, what exactly is proposed there? Is there, are they proposed to be a certain, a type of housing, whether it's geared towards like, rentals or seniors? Do we have that information, or could the applicant comment on that? And I'm also curious about I realize it's just in the conceptual plans here, but I see there's a proposed private clubhouse within that block. So just curious about what the plans are for that portion of the development.
Mike appears he would like to speak to something maybe, or just want to speak to that. So there was two questions there, I believe, on the block and then the clubhouse. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we've gone to the public. We're planning a 1-floor condominium project geared towards seniors. And when talking to the seniors in Lucan, we've found a few things. They wanted a clubhouse. And so that's why we designed that. There was some very specific requests from some of the people we were talking to. So we do have plans drawn. It's just conceptual at this point, but it is a 1-floor condominium project.
Thanks. Give a follow up.
No follow up. Thank
Okay.
you.
Council, any other Councillor Reagan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Oops.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
Through the chair to Councillor Hodgins. So I just wanted to point out that the requested zoning for the R3 property requires that specific communal amenity space. I think it's like 1,350 square meters or something of that nature. So that is actually a requirement in the zoning that communal amenity space is provided for that particular block.
And sorry, Councillor Hodgins, I think that was it for you. Yep. And Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So Dan, just for you, you mentioned that some of this or part of this is contingent on a sewer capacity and our increase in sewer capacity. I'm just wondering what percentage is contingent on increasing our sewage treatment plant by 50%.
Yeah, so through the chair, our best estimates at this point is that there's enough existing capacity within the treatment facility for all of phase 1. So that would include the 61 single detached dwellings as well as the multifamily block.
Gotcha. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Council, any other further comments from council? I again want to concur with originally what Councillor Hodges said. Again, the applicant's working with the comments from the public and working with our staff. It's a great plan. Really, other than the old clover that we just approved for 2-story housing. I mean, there is none in Lucan Biddulph. There is underneath the water tower, they got some 1-stories and the rest going to be condos. Earlier, the applicant was all 1 floors. There is no 2-story houses that are going to be built in Lucan Biddulph probably for 5 years out, I bet you. And so it's very exciting to see this, and hopefully we can move it forward, because right now Lucan Biddulph cannot offer a 2-story house. So it's pretty disappointing. So I'll look forward to you guys moving forward with this. Okay, in front of me, I've got, sorry, Mike, could you just shut that off if you don't hit the, thank you. I want to hear you leaving. Sorry. And it sounded like, to answer that question, was don't pack your bags yet too. So County of Middlesex be advised that Lucan Biddulph recommends draft plan approval for the land known legally as part of lot 27 concession 5 and part of lot 28 concession 5 in the township of Lucan Biddulph, county file number 39T-LB 2002, subject to the draft plan conditions appended to the Lucan Biddulph report PL-04-2023 and subject to the 5-year lapse period. And that the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 12/2020 to rezone the subject properties from future residential FR zone and site-specific future residential exception FR-4 zone to site-specific residential first density exception R1-11-H-4 holding zone and a site-specific residential first density exception R1-12-H-4 holding zone, a site-specific residential third density exception R3-12-H-4 holding zone, an open space zone and site-specific agricultural exception A1-14 zone for the property legally described as part of lot 27, concession 5, and part of lot 28. Concession 5 in the township of Lucan Biddulph be approved and the zoning bylaw be brought forward for consideration. Someone to moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for being here, guys, for asking for us to ask questions. Thank you. All right, moving along. Public Works. Was there any verbals?
No, not
Okay.
at this time.
No, thank you. Parks and Recs, economic development, nothing. I do, and Finance Committee, we are having a meeting this Friday morning at 8:30. Just want to let everybody know. Myself and Daniel Reagan sit on that, so you got an email about that and you got it in your package for your input. So looking forward to getting that started. Councillor comments? Any? Seeing none. Change the budget? No. Motion? No. Did the counts? All right. So this is the recommended motion for retracting third reading of bylaw 02-2023. I've got a motion in front of me here that the third reading of bylaw number 02-2023 for the Atkinson Drain branches B and J 2022 be given on January 3rd, 2023 be retracted due to an administration error. If I get a mover and a seconder, and then I'll ask if there's any questions. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. Any further questions on that? Councillor Hodgins?
Yeah, could we get a brief explanation of what that is?
Yep. Who would like to take that? I think Tina's going to take that.
So there was an error made at the last meeting. When we're passing a drain, it's usually given first and second reading, and then the quarter revision takes place, and then third reading is given 30 days after the quarter revision. It was my error. I didn't point out in the motions that and separated it, so it got first, second, and third reading mistakenly.
All right,
Got
all
it,
clear.
Clark?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. 16.3, recommended motion that council of the township of Lucan Biddulph authorize Lisa DeBoer to attend the 2023 OBIAA conference in London from April 16th to 19th at a cost of $875 plus HST. If I could get a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. Any further questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Bylaws. I believe I just read the motion, right? Or do I read them all, right?
I can just mention what bylaws are included there.
Yeah.
So the first one, there's just the confirming motion. And then there are the last one, there are two zoning bylaw amendments included there, concurrent to applications that we spoke to tonight regarding Old Clover Village 4B for the removal of holding and the Timber Ridge zoning bylaw amendment.
Is there any questions on that? When I'll read the motion. Okay, seeing none. Recommend a motion here that if no one cares to speak to bylaws 05-2023, 200-2023, and 201-2023 on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. Get a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Recommend a motion resolve that the council meeting be adjourned at 7:20. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by